This week's Grimm Fairy Tales: The Straw, the Coal, and the Bean. In a village dwelt a poor old woman who had gathered together a dish of beans and wanted to cook them. So she made a fire on her hearth, and that it might burn the quicker, she lighted it with a handful of straw. When she was emptying the beans into the pan, one dropped without her observing it and lay on the ground beside a straw. And soon afterwards, a burning coal from the fire leapt down to the two. Then the straw began and said, "Dear friends, from whence do you come here?" The coal replied,
"I fortunately sprang out of the fire, and if I had not escaped by main force, my death would have been certain. I should have been burnt to ashes."
The bean said, "I too have escaped with a whole skin, but if the old woman had got me into the pan, I should have been made into broth without any mercy, like my comrades." "And would a better fate have fallen to my lot?" said the straw. "The old woman has destroyed all my brethren in fire and smoke. She seized 60 of them at once and took their lives. I luckily slipped through her fingers."
"But what are we to do now?"
said the coal. "I think," answered the bean, "that as we have so fortunately escaped death, we should keep together like good companions, and lest a new mischance should overtake us here, we should go away together and repair to a foreign country." The proposition pleased the two others, and they set out on their way in company. Soon, however, they came to a little brook, and as there was no bridge or foot plank, they did not know how they were to get over it. The straw hit on a good idea and said, "I will lay myself straight across, and then you can walk over on me as on a bridge." The straw therefore stretched itself from one bank to the other, and the coal, who was of an impetuous disposition, tripped quite boldly onto the newly built bridge. But when she had reached the middle and heard the water rushing beneath her, she was after all afraid and stood still and ventured no farther. The straw, however, began to burn, broke in 2 pieces, and fell into the stream. The coal slipped after her, hissed when she got into the water, and breathed her last. The bean, who had prudently stayed behind on the shore, could not but laugh at the event, was unable to stop, and laughed so heartily that she burst. It would have been all over with her, likewise, if by good fortune a tailor who was traveling in search of work had not sat down to rest by the brook. As he had a compassionate heart, he pulled out his needle and thread and sewed her together. The bean thanked him most prettily, but as the tailor used black thread, all beans since then have a black seam. The Hare's Bride. There was once a woman and her daughter who lived in a pretty garden with cabbages, and a little hare came into it, and during the winter time ate all the cabbages. Then says the mother to the daughter,
"Go into the garden and chase the hare away."
The girl says to the little hare,
"Shoo, shoo, little hare, you are still eating all the cabbages."
The little hare says,
"Maiden, seat thyself on my little hare's tail, and come with me into my little hare's hut."
The maiden refuses. The third day the hare comes again and eats the cabbage. On this the mother says to the daughter,
"Go into the garden and hunt the hare away."
Says the maiden,
"Shoo, shoo, little hare, you are still eating all our cabbages."
Says the little hare,
"Come, maiden, seat thyself on my little hare's tail, and come with me into my little hare's hut."
The girl seats herself on the little hare's tail, and then the hare takes her far away to his little hut. and says, "Now cook green cabbage and millet seed, and I will invite the wedding guests." Then all the wedding guests assembled. Who were the wedding guests? That I can tell you, as another told it to me. They were all hares, and the crow was there as parson to marry the bride and bridegroom, and the fox as clerk, and the altar was under the rainbow. The girl, however, was sad, for she was all alone. The little hare comes and says, open the doors, the wedding guests are merry." The bride says nothing, but weeps. The little hare goes away. The little hare comes back and says, take off the lid, the wedding guests are hungry." The bride again says nothing and weeps. The little hare goes away. The little hare comes back and says, take off the lid, the wedding guests are waiting." Then the bride says nothing, and the hare goes away, but she dresses a straw doll in her clothes, and gives her a spoon to stir with, and sets her by the pan with the millet seed, and goes back to her mother. The little hare comes once more and says, take off the lid, and gets up and strikes the doll on the head so that her cap falls off. Then the little hare sees that it is not the bride, and goes away and is sorrowful. The Hare and the Hedgehog. This story, my dear young folks, seems to be false, but is really true. For my grandfather, from whom I have it, used always, when relating it, to say complacently,
"It must be true, my son, or else no one could tell it to you."
The story is as follows. One Sunday morning about harvest time, just as the buckwheat was in bloom, the sun was shining brightly in the heavens, the east wind was blowing warmly over the stubble fields, the larks were singing in the air, the bees buzzing among the buckwheat. The people were all going in their Sunday clothes to church, and all creatures were happy, and the hedgehog was happy too. The hedgehog, however, was standing by his door with his arms akimbo, enjoying the morning breezes, and slowly trilling a little song to himself, which was neither better nor worse than the songs which hedgehogs are in the habit of singing on a blessed Sunday morning. Whilst he was thus singing half aloud to himself, it suddenly occurred to him that, while his wife was washing and drying the children, he might very well take a walk into the field and see how his turnips were going on. The turnips were, in fact, close beside his house, and he and his family were accustomed to eat them, for which reason he looked upon them as his own. No sooner said than done. The hedgehog shut the house door behind him and took the path to the field. He had not gone very far from home, and was just turning round the slope bush, which stands there outside the field, to go up into the turnip field, when he observed the hare, who had gone out on business of the same kind, namely, to visit his cabbages. When the hedgehog caught sight of the hare, he bade him a friendly good morning, but the hare, who was in his own way a distinguished gentleman and frightfully haughty, did not return the hedgehog's greeting, but said to him, assuming at the same time a very contemptuous manner, "How do you happen to be running about here in the fields so early in the morning?" "I am taking a walk," said the hedgehog. "A walk?" said the hare with a smile. "It seems to me that you might use your legs for a better purpose." This answer made the hedgehog furiously angry, for he can bear anything but an attack on his legs, just because they are crooked by nature. So now the hedgehog said to the hare, "You seem to imagine that you can do more with your legs than I with mine." That is just what I do think, said the Hare. That can be put to the test, said the Hedgehog. I wager that if we run a race, I will outstrip you. That is ridiculous. You with your short legs, said the Hare. But for my part, I am willing if you have such a monstrous fantasy for it. What shall we wager? A golden louis d'or and a bottle of brandy, said the Hedgehog. Done, said the Hare. Shake hands on it, and then we may as well come off at once. Nay, said the Hedgehog. There is no such great hurry. I am still fasting. I will go home first and have a little breakfast. In half an hour I will be back again at this place. Hereupon the Hedgehog departed, for the Hare was quite satisfied with this. On his way, the Hedgehog thought to himself, The Hare relies on his long legs, but I will contrive to get the better of him. He may be a great man, but he is a very silly fellow, and he shall pay for what he has said. So when the Hedgehog reached home, he said to his wife, Wife, dress thyself quickly. Thou must go out to the field with me.
What is going on then?
Said his wife. I have made a wager with the Hare for a gold louis d'or and a bottle of brandy. I am to run a race with him, and thou must be present.
Good heavens, husband, the wife now cried. Art thou not right in thy mind? Hast thou completely lost thy wits? What can make thee want to run a race with the Hare?
Hold thy tongue, woman, said the Hedgehog. That is my affair. Don't begin to discuss things which are matters for men. Be off, dress thyself, and come with me.
What could the Hedgehog's wife do? She was forced to obey him, whether she liked it or not. So when they had set out on their way together, the Hedgehog said to his wife, Now pay attention to what I am going to say. Look you, I will make the long field our race course. The Hare shall run it one furrow, and I in another, and we will begin to run from the top. Now all that thou hast to do is to place thyself here below in the furrow, and when the Hare arrives at the end of the furrow, on the other side of thee, thou must cry out to him, I am here already. Then they reached the field, and the Hedgehog showed his wife her place, and then walked up the field. When he reached the top, the Hare was already there. Shall we start? Said the Hare. Certainly, said the Hedgehog. Then both at once, so saying, each placed himself in the own furrow. The Hare counted, once, twice, thrice, and away, and went off like a whirlwind down the field. The Hedgehog, however, only ran about 3 paces, and then he stooped down in the furrow and stayed quietly where he was. When the Hare therefore arrived in full career at the lower end of the field, the Hedgehog's wife met him with the cry, I am here already. The Hare was shocked and wondered not a little. He thought no other than that it was the Hedgehog himself who was calling to him, for the Hedgehog's wife looked just like her husband. The Hare, however, thought to himself, That has not been done fairly, and cried, It must be runneth again. Let us have it again. And once more he went off like the wind in a storm, so that he seemed to fly. But the Hedgehog's wife stayed quietly in her place. So when the Hare reached the top of the field, the Hedgehog himself cried out to him, I am here already. The Hare, however, quite beside himself with anger, cried, It must be run again, and we must have it again. All right, answered the Hedgehog. For my part, we'll run as often as you choose. So the Hare ran 73 times more, and the Hedgehog always held out against him. And every time the hare reached either the top or the bottom, either the hedgehog or his wife said, "I am here already." At the 74th time, however, the hare could no longer reach the end. In the middle of the field, he fell to the ground. Blood streamed out of his mouth, and he lay dead on the spot. But the hedgehog took the louis d'or, which he had won, and the bottle of brandy, called his wife out of the furrow, and both went home together in great delight. And if they are not dead, they are living there still. This is how it happened that the hedgehog made the hare run races with him on the Buxtehude heath till he died. And since that time, no hare has ever had any fancy for running races with a Buxtehude hedgehog. The moral of the story, however, is firstly, that no one, however great he may be, should permit himself to jest at anyone beneath him, even if he be only a hedgehog. And secondly, it teaches that when a man marries, he should take a wife in his own position, who looks just as he himself looks. So whosoever is a hedgehog, let him see to it that his wife is a hedgehog also, and so forth. The Dog and the Sparrow. A sheepdog had not a good master, but on the contrary, one who let him suffer hunger. As he could no longer stay with him, he went quite sadly away. On the road he met a sparrow who said, "Brother Dog, why art thou so sad?" The dog replied, "I'm hungry and have nothing to eat." Then said the sparrow, "Dear brother, come into the town with me, and I will satisfy thy hunger." So they went into the town together, and when they came in front of a butcher's shop, the sparrow said to the dog, "Stay there, and I will pick a bit of meat down for thee." And he alighted on the stall, looked about him to see that no one was observing him, and pecked and pulled and tore so long at a piece which lay on the edge that it slipped down. Then the dog seized it, ran into a corner and devoured it. The sparrow said, "Now come with me to another shop, and then I will get thee one more piece that thou mayest be satisfied." When the dog had devoured the second piece as well, the sparrow asked, "Brother Dog, hast thou now had enough?" "Yes, I have had meat enough," he answered. "But I have had no bread yet," said the sparrow. "Thou shalt have that also. Come with me." Then he took him to a baker's shop, and pecked at a couple of little buns till they rolled down. And as the dog wanted still more, he led him to another stall, and again got bread for him. When that was consumed, the sparrow said, "Brother Dog, hast thou now had enough?" "Yes," he replied. "Now we will both walk a while outside the town." Then they both went out onto the highway. It was, however, warm weather, and when they had walked a little way, the dog said, "I am tired and would like to sleep." "Well, do sleep," answered the sparrow, "and in the meantime, I will seat myself on a branch." So the dog lay down on the road and fell fast asleep. Whilst he lay sleeping there, a wagoner came driving by, who had a cart with 3 horses, laden with 2 barrels of wine. The sparrow, however, saw that he was not going to turn aside, but was staying in the wheel track in which the dog was lying. So it cried, "Wagoner, don't do it, or I will make thee poor." The wagoner, however, growled to himself, "Thou wilt not make me poor," and cracked his whip and drove the cart over the dog, and the wheels killed him. Then the sparrow cried, Thou hast runneth over my brother dog and killed him. It shall cost thee thy cart and horses.
Cart and horses indeed, said the wagoner. What harm canst thou do me? And drove onwards. Then the sparrow crept under the cover of the cart, and pecked so long at the same bunghole that he got the bung out, and then all the wine ran out without the driver noticing it. But once, when he was looking behind him, he saw that the cart was dripping, and looked at the barrels and saw that one of them was empty. Unfortunate fellow that I am, he cried. Not unfortunate enough yet, said the sparrow, and flew on to the head of one of the horses and pecked his eyes out. When the driver saw that, he drew out his axe and wanted to hit the sparrow, but the sparrow flew into the air, and he hit his horse on the head, and it fell down dead. Oh, what an unfortunate man I am, cried he. Not unfortunate enough yet, said the sparrow. And when the driver drove on with the two horses, the sparrow again crept under the cover and pecked the bung out of the second cask, so all the wine was spilt. When the driver became aware of it, he again cried, Oh, what an unfortunate man I am. But the sparrow replied, Not unfortunate enough yet, and seated himself on the head of the second horse and pecked his eyes out. The driver ran up to it and raised his axe to strike, but the sparrow flew into the air and the blow struck the horse, which fell. Oh, what an unfortunate man I am. Not unfortunate enough yet, said the sparrow, and lighted on the third horse's head and pecked out his eyes. The driver, in his rage, struck at the sparrow without looking round, and did not hit him, but killed his third horse likewise. Oh, what an unfortunate man I am, cried he. Not unfortunate enough yet, answered the sparrow. Now will I make thee unfortunate in thy home, and flew away. The driver had to leave the wagon standing, and full of anger and vexation went home. Ah, said he to his wife, what misfortunes I have had. My wine has run out, and the horses are all three dead. Alas, husband, she answered, what a malicious bird has come into the house. It has gathered together every bird there is in the world, and they have fallen on our corn up there and are devouring it. Then he went upstairs, and thousands of birds were sitting on the loft and had eaten up all the corn, and the sparrow was sitting in the midst of them. Then the driver cried, Oh, what an unfortunate man I am. Not unfortunate enough yet, answered the sparrow. Wagoner, it shall cost thee thy life as well, and flew out. Then the wagoner had lost all his property, and he went downstairs into the room, sat down behind the stove, and was quite furious and bitter. But the sparrow sat outside in front of the window and cried, Wagoner, it shall cost thee thy life. Then the wagoner snatched the axe and threw it at the sparrow, but it only broke the window and did not hit the bird. The sparrow now hopped in, placed himself on the stove, and cried, Wagoner, it shall cost thee thy life. The latter, quite mad and blind with rage, smote the stove in twain, and as the sparrow flew from one place to another, so it fared with all his household furniture, looking glass, benches, table, and at last the walls of his house, and yet he could not hit the bird. At length, however, he caught it in his hand. Then his wife said, Shall I kill it? No, cried he, that would be too merciful. It shall die much more cruelly. And he took it and swallowed it whole. The sparrow, however,
began to flutter about in his body and fluttered up again into the man's mouth. Then it stretched out his head and cried, "Wagoner, it shall still cost thee thy life." The driver gave the axe to his wife and said, "Wife, kill the bird in my mouth for me." The woman struck but missed her blow and hit the wagoner right on his head, so that he fell dead. But the sparrow flew up and away.